Everyone. Hi, Sarah. How you doing today?
Hi, Sally. It's good to see your face. I'm doing
Mm,
fine.
Nice to see you too. Yeah, just so everybody knows, we work together, but we work across the country from each other. I'm in Connecticut. Sarah is in Portland, Oregon. Um, all right, Sarah. So let's get started on what kind of a summer schedule you are creating for your seniors. And I'm very eager to hear this because, as we talked about in the first segment, I'm not actually the most organized person. It's a skill that I had to really
hmm
learn, and I think of you as being quite naturally organized. So very interested in hearing what you've come up with to help your students.
Yeah. So, first, yes, I do think I'm a pretty organized person, but first we have to get the student on board as to why organization matters.
Mhm.
I spend a lot of time working with my students about the fact that if they are ahead of the game, if they finish most of their college application work in the summer, they're going to have a much more enjoyable and less stressful senior
Mhm.
year. So framing is important of first helping the student realize that, hey, if I work a lot this summer, then I can handle my intense classes in the fall. I can try to have some fun in the fall. It's really about preventing stress in the fall of senior year, feeling in control of the situation. And I think that that is an empowerment model that makes then my uptight organizational approach feel like a welcome gift for most students versus, ooh, whoa, she's making me do a lot this summer.
Mhm.
I think organization is also a stress reduction empowerment tool. So we
Mhm.
can talk about that in a second. But the first part, I think, is discussing goals and mindset. I challenge all students that I work with to be done with all of their application essays before senior year starts. And I
Mhm.
say, okay, the goal is that in the fall, we're just doing finishing touches, final tweaks and adjustments.
Mhm.
Maybe still writing some of the little supplemental essays like why this college, those types of things, but that the main essays and work is done so that they feel on top of things and maybe even ahead of some of their friends, but in a really delightful way before
Mhm.
senior year starts.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually managed to get my seniors there, and I've noticed that they're all like, well, I told my friends I've already got my essay
Mhm.
done and the common application filled out, and they were so surprised, and they're so pleased to be
Yeah,
able to say that.
yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, I've actually gotten really good buy-in this year too, because I say, well, think about it. Right now, I mean, things are loosening up definitely at this point and might be completely open by the time this airs. But I was getting a lot of students started early because I thought, well, imagine if you have free time when things are open and you're actually allowed to leave your house.
Yep.
I
Oh,
mean,
and people are going to be ready to leave when they're able to, for the most
right.
part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for the most part. So do
Yes.
everything you can now when you're not really allowed to go out, when gatherings
Mhm.
are limited. Get this out of the way.
Definitely. I work with a student who's a swimmer, and they're hoping that the pool is going to open back up for a lot of extensive training in July because they're so behind on their conditioning. So I told her, I said, okay, well, we need to buckle up and do a lot this June
Mhm.
just for that
Yeah.
reason. So, yeah,
Yeah,
completely.
absolutely. And people might not realize, but the common application essay, the topics have been available for months now. So
Yeah.
there's absolutely no reason not to start. But anyway, okay. So what are some of the concrete things you're thinking about? I just mentioned
Mhm.
essays, but there's more than
Yeah.
that for sure.
Definitely. So I overwhelmingly start with my students on essays, as you mentioned. For most students, the very first is the common application essay, because if you look up those prompts online, they're open-ended, they're reflective, there are content in those that you can utilize in other applications. So let's say you're then gonna also work on the University of California application or the coalition application. Quite often, if you start with a common application, you can use some of that content. So that's a
Hmm.
good starting point. And that's one of those core things that I say must be started and then definitely done before senior year. The second benchmark that I find to be really helpful is giving yourself a deadline to have a more or less finalized list of the colleges a student plans on applying to by the end of June. And there's a
Hmm.
reason I say this. First of all, yes, you can change it. You can add schools, remove schools later. But the reason I say the end of June is that the vast majority of colleges use May and June every year to make adjustments to their application requirements, processes, deadlines, et cetera, for the coming year. And then usually by early July, they've started to update their website of any changes to their deadlines and requirements. And so I find that using June, in addition to essays, to also do research, narrow your list, get it down to that manageable list of, let's say, 10 schools that you're going to apply to, and feel pretty good about it. Right now, colleges, in response to COVID, have amazing resources of virtual campus tours. You can do Zoom information sessions with admissions officers at many campuses. So use June to research right now, to really try to explore. And I know when this airs, it'll be almost the end of June, but still not quite there. So then let's say come early-ish to mid-July, your list is feeling pretty good. You're then ready for the next step, which is creating a really detailed spreadsheet. Now, spreadsheets might not be everyone's favorite, but I see them as an empowering organizational tool. But what I do is I put the colleges down the left-hand side, and then across the top, everything you have to research for every single school. And usually by early to mid-July, colleges have published what those requirements are going to be for that year. So that's things like the deadline, the type of application, like are they on the Common Application or not? Do they have additional essays? Are you going to apply early or regular? Do they have financial aid application requirements? All of the little pieces in one spreadsheet. I think that you could agree, Sally, that every college is very similar in a lot of their requirements, but also just different enough to make a student completely miss something or to get confused.
Yeah,
And
without a doubt. Listen, when I started in college counseling, I didn't realize that UNC Chapel Hill was October 15th. So for their early action deadline. So I'm telling students it's November 1, and then I suddenly have this panic attack, and they've got to move everything up by 2 weeks. I mean, I'd never heard of a school. So many schools are November 1, and then there's like just a couple schools or a few schools that are October 15th. So you have to check. You have to check. Yeah.
And you have to really be careful that what you're reading on their website says for this year that it's for applicants to fall of 2021, not 2020, to make sure that it's updated.
Yes.
And my gut is telling me, my educated guess, that a lot of colleges are going to make some pretty beefy changes this year to their application requirements. Not totally overhauling the system, but they may have some different essay requirements because of their changes in reality of COVID. A lot of schools are now being test optional because of COVID testing cancellations. So students are going to need to really closely read what all of the requirements are. And if you document them in one spreadsheet and then have that available for your whole family and support systems to see, then you all have all the information in one place, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, and even me, who used to see spreadsheets as something that was a punishment, I've since then realized how useful they are. Like you said, all that information is in one spot. You know, the deadline is right there if you want to glance. And one of the things that I tell students to do is print it out and pin it somewhere. Or if you do everything on your computer, just open it up and have it open when you're working.
Yep. And if you use a version of a spreadsheet that can be shareable with other people, I love, and I've not just done this with my clients, but also family members, relatives, nieces, et cetera, that I've supported, that I can have eyes on that too. So students can have some accountability with a parent, whoever is working with them to support them, I think is really helpful. One little detail I forgot to mention is I find it really helpful to have one deadline for the college's deadline, one column, I'm sorry, for the college's deadline, and then another column that I name, let's say you're the student Sally, I'd say Sally's deadline, and then make a schedule by which point you will submit the application and kind of think backwards of, you know, what your life looks like, big events, etc. I lovingly but firmly nudge most of my students to try to submit applications ideally 2 weeks before the deadline, but at least a week before, and have a schedule that is their schedule And oftentimes it's a rolling schedule where each weekend they're pushing submit on a school or things like that to really feel like they're on top of it as well.
Mhm. See, I knew I was going to learn something, even though I've been doing this forever. I knew I was going to learn something from you because I always tell them at least 2 weeks ahead of time, but I've never thought of saying specifically, let's address your schedule and
Hmm.
figure it out. And that's the way to get really strong buy-in from them.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, some students are like, why am I pushing to get this done when I have more time?
Right. And let's assume, for instance, that schools are in person in this fall, who knows? A lot of
Hmm.
students really want to have fun on homecoming weekend, for example.
Hmm.
So I'll say, hey, do you have any big weekends this fall? And let's block those out. Let's say, no college work will be done then. And let's put realistic submission deadlines for Sally's deadlines around weekends that actually feel attainable for you.
Yeah, and then there's holidays, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. I mean, a lot of
Hmm.
really important holidays come up around then too. So
Yeah,
that
definitely.
is very good. Yeah. Um, anything else?
Those are the really big ones. I'd also say that if you haven't already, it doesn't hurt to email teachers. They might see it if their school year is done, and make sure you have a plan or you've thought about who will write the letters of recommendation for colleges that accept them. Also, spending some time on the activities and honors section of the applications. Each application platform is a little bit different, so once you can get in there and see that, that can be helpful. But those are really the main things for the summer, and then you can really confidently put the finishing polishes and touches in the fall.
hmm So I do want to say, I think you're right that there's going to be a lot of changes this year, but I've
Mhm.
actually, because I had some students finish really early because they couldn't do their extracurricular activities, so they're
Mhm.
done with their common application essay. I've actually had a few I told them, look, this is a risk, but it's unlikely that University of Wisconsin is going to change their essay topic. I
Yeah.
mean, they might, right? Like you have to be
Mhm.
ready. They might, but there are schools where it's basically been the same as
Right.
long as I've been doing this. Every year I have students apply to University of Wisconsin. It always seems to be basically the same essay topic. So
Mhm.
so in that case, sometimes I'm like, maybe just try it out. Like,
Yeah.
don't get mad at me though. I'm warning you that it might change, but I do
Yeah.
think it's going to be worth your time. And so kind of wondering if you're thinking about doing that or if you're going to give your students a break.
I agree with you that that's probably not a bad risk to take, but I tend to work with a lot of students in California who are at least filling out the University of California
Mhm.
system application and the common application. So I have so much that they can start with the 4 UC essays and the main common application essay, that I just start with that.
Mhm.
And then I roll into the supplements later anyway. So I think it's just a matter of, if a student's just applying to common application schools, go for it, if they have
Mhm.
that time and bandwidth. So I think it matters what their list looks like, but I think you're right. I don't think that the essays are going to be the part that change much. I think that we could see changes in some deadlines. We could see definitely changes around testing preferences and policies, but probably not the essays, and it's probably not a bad risk to take.
Right. And even if there is a change, it might be like a small tweak where they can probably use most of
Hmm.
it. So,
Yes. One other thing I'll just throw out there is, you know this, Sally, but the Common Application has added a new additional question about COVID to the
mhm.
application. And I'm curious what your thoughts are, Sally, but for the most part, most students probably aren't going to put a whole lot there, but it's something worth thinking about. I think that there are students whose lives have been substantially impacted by COVID,
Mhm.
and it's helpful to give colleges some understanding. Maybe their parent is a single parent, and so they've been having to manage a lot of the household. Maybe their parent's a nurse at the front lines, and that's been emotional. Maybe there's something really substantial that needs
Mhm.
to be shared to provide context.
Mhm.
If not, it's okay to leave it blank as well. Do you have any other thoughts of thinking about that one this summer?
Yeah, I mean, something that came up recently was I talked to a family where, both parents work and the younger son was home. And
Mm-hmm.
so the older son actually ended up taking on a lot of responsibility
Yeah.
for his 12-year-old brother's kind of sort of homeschooling.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
So suddenly, like, this was this major kind of responsibility. And I said, definitely write about that. That is something
Mm-hmm.
that colleges really do care about.
Yeah.
So,
And COVID or not, colleges do care about young people having to rise to the occasion of big family duties. And that's a perfect example. So I think all families can be thinking about, how has COVID changed our life? And do we need to say anything there?
exactly. Yeah. So you can add that to your to-do list.
Mhm.
Um, all right. And so as regular listeners know, sometimes we like to do a school spotlight. And in the past, it's just kind of been me and the other hosts kind of reading through like a brief explanation. But I thought we've got some extra time today, and I think it would be really fun. Like, I want to hear from somebody about the school that they went to or that they love for whatever reason that might be. Now, I thought you'd be the perfect person, as having come from Lewis and Clark, to talk about Lewis and Clark. So could
Mhm.
you tell us a little bit about it? Like, just start out with the basics and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So Lewis and Clark College is a small liberal arts college, about 2,000 undergraduate students in Portland, Oregon, and it's kind of up on a hill right on the edge of the city in the suburbs. So you're in Portland, but it's surrounded by a big park. It feels like a really, what you would imagine, residential, beautiful college campus. It's definitely your home away from home. They require the first 2 years of students to live on campus, but they provide or guarantee housing for all 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of students do live on campus because they have apartments, it's residential. They have students from most of the 50 states and over 80 countries. So it's geographically bringing students from all over, and they work a lot to make it feel like your home for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I've actually been to Lewis and Clark. I mean, it's our rival. I went to Reed College, and I'll just say that I thought Lewis and Clark was an extremely beautiful campus as well. And
Mhm.
there were a lot of really cool things about it. So we just have like 3 minutes left.
Mhm.
But, tell me some of the things that really stand out to you about Lewis and Clark. Like, I remember their study abroad program was
Yeah.
one thing that was remarkable, just really,
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, and I'll overtly state my bias here. I met my husband at Lewis and Clark as an undergrad, so I did
Mhm.
attend there. We're a Lewis and Clark family, and I years later, went back and worked in admissions there for 5 years. I definitely would say that the international emphasis, not just study abroad, is a big part of Lewis and Clark's identity. Over 2/3 of the students study abroad, and that includes athletes, pre-med students, science students, demographics that often don't have the flexibility to study abroad. They also have some grants that allow it for students of low-income backgrounds who usually have to work during the semester to have a grant for their spending money while they are abroad. They really try to make it accessible. So studying abroad is a big part of their community, but also students coming to Lewis and Clark from abroad. So a lot of diplomat families, international aid families, and also citizens of other countries see Lewis and Clark as a place to go to. So there is a wealth of international perspectives infused in the community. A lot of international traditions as well, international fair every year, etc. There are also a lot of themed residence halls, and one of them is an internationally themed residence hall. So you can choose to engage in that. Multilingual students are definitely celebrated for language skills, etc.
Okay. All right, great. Well, unfortunately, I have to cut it off there because we've run out of time. But thank you so much, Sarah. That was great.
Yeah, have a good day.
You too. All right. And thank you to all my guests today. Get ready for our show on July 9th when host Ian Fisher will be talking with one of our College Coach admission experts about her college story. So you got a little taste of it from Sarah, but this is going to be a full segment. So it'll be great. And if you want to know more about how to handle the admission process in the time of COVID-19, please know that we're talking about it a lot. We've had a lot of segments about it. And you can go to our blog page at blog.getintocollege.com. There you'll be able to search to search for particular blogs and also the Getting In show summaries there so that you know which show is going to target the topic that you want. The full archive is available to you. And last, don't forget, we're here every Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. So check us out.